Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer this afternoon, Logan Landers, and join me to talk about the 2024 NFL Draft prospect known as Kool-Aid McKinstry, the quarterback out of Alabama. As always, Mr. Football, Vincent Turner. How you doing this afternoon, Vincent?
Hey, how you doing today, young man? Mr. Logan Landers, the most talented guy in social media.
Thank you, sir. I'm doing great today. The sun's out, the birds are chirping. Most importantly, we're talking some football. We're talking some draft coming up right around the corner, just a couple of months away. And we got a lot of talented players that we've already talked about earlier today, and a lot that we have coming down the pipeline between now and the NFL draft. But, guys, if you want to be posted, if you want to be updated on all of our draft prospect reviews, what we think about the players, be sure to check us out on Facebook and YouTube, main two platforms there. And also, if you enjoy podcasts, you can check us out thanks to the Believe Podcast Network on any podcast stream platform that your heart desires. Well, Vincent, let's get into it, man. Let's talk about Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama. And I just got to say this first and foremost, man. If we were doing a draft based solely off of names, this got to be my number one overall pick.
Ain't no question.
Hey, no question about it. Kool-Aid McKinstry. Let's talk about this young man, Vincent. Coming in at 6'1", 195 out of Alabama. Hometown was in Alabama, so he played a lot of good ball for a team that I'm sure he grew up watching and rooting for. So lived out that dream there. Now is very soon going to be realizing another dream, and that is going to be being drafted high in the NFL draft. We obviously, if you're Alabama, you got to have a lot of credentials. You got to have a lot of star power. And throughout this man's tenure, he has certainly lived up to the hype. But let's break him down and talk about what he's been up to and how we think he'll perform at the next level. Well, Vincent, coming into college, let alone, he's a 4-star recruit. ESPN gave him a 5-star, and he was an absolute monster in high school. Had 13 total touchdowns in his senior year, won the Mr. Football title, also got Defensive Player of the Year. And he chose to go to Alabama, had some other options as well, like Auburn, LSU, I believe. But he chose to go with Roll Tide, Nick Saban, throughout his tenure. And he was an absolute monster, I would say, from the get-go. He made his presence felt early and fast. And, 2021 freshman season made it work. He had 26 total tackles on the year, pass defended, sack on the year as well, and an INT. 2022 was a breakout year for that young man, though, Vincent. 15 passes defended, also had 35 tackles on the year, got a sack and an INT. And that was really when people started to get started looking at his radar and saying, okay, this young man might be something special here. And then this past season, 2023, he followed it up with another impressive year. 32 total tackles for the young man, 7 passes defended on the year. So when I see that, Vincent, I think of just an absolute ball hawk. And also, too, people forget that he is multi-talented. He's also going to be he could be doing some punt returns in the National Football League. He's able to get some good runs. 45-yard career long for him, set in 2022. So he is a guy who obviously is super athletic, who they trust, has good hands, obviously, if you're going to be a punt returner as well as a dominant cornerback. But looking at his traits, he is an absolute monster, Vincent. He's athletic. He's a really it doesn't seem like pressure gets this guy also. And we know Alabama's played in some big, big games throughout his tenure there since 2021. All the constant SEC battles they've had, the ones with Georgia have been legendary. And this young man has lived up to the hype. He's excelled in pretty much every big game you can think of. He's great in zone coverage. My goodness, he can read a defense like no other. He's got good length as well. I mentioned he's 6'1", 195. He's got those long arms you like to see, as you can see on the screen what he's all about. That's why he's got so many passes defended. And speaking of that, just his ball skills are next to none, I think, with how he's able to go up and either pick the ball off, knock it out of someone's hand. He is pretty much going to be stuck on that receiver like white on rice. You ain't leaving this guy. He is an absolute ball hawk who plays tremendous coverage. I mentioned he's got a really easygoing persona, and that just means you don't see him get rattled. You don't see him have emotional outbursts or nothing like that. You see him just always just going with the flow kind of on the sidelines or in the game. And I mean, he's just an absolute monster. I feel that Nick Saban and company really did a tremendous job coaching this young man and getting him to that next level. I think that with the right coaching staff around him, and if you compare him with another dynamic cornerback, I mean, he is going to be an absolute monster in the NFL, I think, in a quick amount of time. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry, as we've talked about, is part of the dynamic duo out there in Alabama with that other cornerback they got with Arnold. And I think that if you get him on a solid team and a good defense, he can contribute for you day one. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit, Vince, if we see this guy go early day one in the NFL draft coming up in 2024. What are your thoughts on Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama?
Kool-Aid.
Yes, sir.
Kool-Aid. Leonard Skinner. Sweet
Yes,
home
sir.
Alabama. You think about all the great cornerbacks that played at the University of Alabama. The young man that started across from Mr. Kool-Aid, Tyron Arnold. Then you think about Antonio Langton. You think about Gene Jelks. You think about Mike Washington. And then you think about Don McNeil. And then I look at his skill set. And like I said, 6'1", 190. And then think about the comparison to all the other great cornerbacks that's played in the college game. I'm going to start with Trent Bryant, who was at the University of Arkansas at the time I was there, was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, game similar. Derek Hatchett, that played at the University of Texas, along with his brother Mike Hatchett. Then, of course, Kool-Aid is very skilled in the bump and run. You know who's very skilled in the bump and run coming out of Louisville? Mr. Frank Minifield. And when you all look at Mr. Kool-Aid McKenzie, while we're talking about him right now, go back, and he has his same game feeling similar to a gentleman that's part of 100 yards football. There was a two-time All-American at Florida State, ended up being the Falcons' #1 overall pick. His game is very similar to who, Mr. Landers?
That's Mr. BB, Bobby Butler.
Okay, and he's got that skill, as I just mentioned, that bump and run like Frank Minifield when he was at Louisville and he was with the Dog Pound with the Cleveland Browns. But what I love about the gentleman, he's got exceptional awareness at the cornerback position. You brought it up, Mr. Landers, outstanding poise as a cornerback. Then he plays well in the run support. Outstanding attitude, a team leader. And finally, Mr. Butler told me two things you have to play the cornerback position on the college level and the NFL level. You got to have outstanding foot quickness, and Logan, you got to be the student of the game. Kool-Aid has all those traits, and that's why he's going to go high in the NFL draft, and he played in the best conference of all of college football, the SEC.
Yes, sir. Well said, and I think you summed it up great. Is that he did this. He got all those passes defended. He was guarding some of the best receivers in the best conference in football, in college football, being the SEC, with the most talent being produced each and every single year. So obviously those passes defended, they weren't a fluke. They weren't against, some lower level teams. This was the highest of highs here. And Kool-Aid McKinstry did it done, all with a smile on his face you can see on the screen. And I'm expecting whoever drafts this man will also be having some smiles on their face, Vincent, because they're going to get an absolute gamer come the 2024 NFL draft. Your final words on Kool-Aid McKinstry.
All I can say is sweet home Alabama, first round, Leonard Skinner. He was going to represent Mr. Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yes, sir. Well said. Looking forward to seeing where this young man goes. We want to hear from you guys, though, in the comments, Facebook and YouTube. Where will Kool-Aid McKinstry go? What team will draft him? What round will he go in? And how big of an impact will he have in the National Football League? As always, Mr. Football, Vincent Turner, absolute pleasure talking sports with you each and every week. I've been your host, producer, Logan Landers. Guys, if you enjoy the video, once again, give us a like, follow, share, and subscribe. And until then, we'll talk again on another